everyone, and welcome to another episode of Lost Through the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Josh Myota, and tonight's special guest we have James Rink with Super Soldier Talk, where we're going to talk about some Super Soldier business.
Well, thank you, Josh, for that introduction. I'm very grateful to be on the show today. So, for those of you who are not familiar with my work, my channel is Super Soldier Talk. And go over to YouTube. I prefer you subscribe on Rumble. I also have a website for that where you can check up. I have an archive that goes back to 2010 when I started documenting this content and the whole Milab military abduction community. Oh, and I got a book too. So you can see my book. You can get my book. You can see it by getting it at neologicaltech.com. And I have my meditation cubes on there. So maybe Josh can put that link in the description to make it easier for you.
Oh, absolutely, James.
So the book is 400 pages long, and it goes back to the early days when I first started doing this. I have some research on the different planetary corporations and some of the Milab experiences that I've been through. And there's some channel material in here as well from various different sources. Over the years, I've collected, documented really this material in our community. So check that out. It's called Lone Wolf. Okay.
Do you want to explain to everybody what Milab actually is? We cover a lot of different topics on Lost in the Rabbit Hole, from paranormal to extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
Cult.
Okay. Well, back in the day when the research was in its infancy, a Milab, which it still stands for, is a military abduction. So initially, it was believed that a contactee would be abducted by a variety of different extraterrestrial races. Usually it's the Greys, but not limited to them. And afterward, the military would abduct the contactee to interrogate them to get information of what they experienced on the extraterrestrial craft. So over the years, we've realized what we termed a military abduction is not necessarily abducting a contactee. We later found out that the abductee was used in a military program where their consciousness may have, it's not the only way they do it, be transferred into a clone body where they served for 20 years in the breakaway human civilization out there in the universe. So we have some people that had repeated 20 impacts, which Jason Rice is referred to as the career return program. So I served for 330 years through various clone bodies through my career return programs, and some of them was as a super soldier. So that's where we get the whole idea of a super soldier. So it's not the only way. Some people could spend 20 years re-aged and have their memories wiped, sent back in time, and then we've had a few people report about that. In particular, the Super Tech GSF information, which you can find on supersoldiertalk.com to find that report. Actually, I got it in my book now, so you can get that too. But so I think hopefully I answered your question, Josh.
Yes.
So what would you like to know now?
When did you first realize you were having Milab experiences?
Very good question. So, as a child, I've always had these night terrors where I would see what looks like Greys were coming into my home and taking me, and I didn't want to explore it until later in life when I realized I was being abducted. But it was not only just being abducted, it was being created, experimented, cloned, and so on. But that would have begun in my mid-20s. I met an individual, name is Nathan, and I've got the transcripts of my conversation with him through the Yahoo Messenger. I don't know if you're old enough to remember Yahoo Messenger.
I am.
Oh wait, well anyway, but the point is that Nate said that he had some unusual experiences with telekinesis in school and rage issues, and so I was just joking one day to go check out Andy Perot's story, which is actually, I just interviewed Eve Lorgan, was on Eve Lorgan's website, the Project Superman. Do you know about Andy Perot? Josh, have you read that material?
I have not read Andy
Okay.
Perot.
So what Andy Perot reported was he was taken to the Rochester, New York University, where in the library there was MK Ultra type experiments performed on him to see if they could create an alter, a split of his own consciousness, which would be programmed to believe it had superhuman abilities. And for Andy, that was a successful experiment. So he was taken to underground bases at Montauk, the consciousness chair at Montauk, where you could visualize matter and it would project into existence. So he was one of the kids when he was younger used in that experiment. So I was just joking with my friend Nathan. I said, hey, go check this out. And then that's when what I would call an alter would come out. And I listed different alter names, and I would recommend that he would use his abilities for self-defense. And then about a month later, we talk again, and he says his memories are being deleted. He's in a white room. And I'm like, well, just keep fighting. So a month later, we talk again. This time, he said that he activated my DNA and I could do everything he can do. And I was talking about somebody was following me around the mall, taking my photos. I think the guy was from whatever Space Command, one of these super soldiers in the German program, but can't confirm that or not. But the point is, he said he'll take care of it. I'm like, okay, great. Later that evening, I heard some papers moving around downstairs, and I went down the stairway and I saw like this blue orb moving around. I'm like, okay, I'm not dealing with this. I slammed the door at the bottom of the stairs, and I went back up to go to sleep. And at that point, I had some really bad insomnia, which I now later realized, well, not really. I knew I had PTSD because I did been diagnosed with ADHD and OCD, but I went through neurofeedback program treatments, and ultimately they settled on a PTSD protocol, and I was getting the most results from that. So I had really problems sleeping, and I would sleep in a sleeping bag. And when I woke up in the morning, I had 3 claw marks down my shoulder like this. And I was like, oh, great. Oh, no, not this again. And then let's see here. I go to like a local MUFON UFO group, and there's this picture of a gray of his hand out. It says, I believe. I don't know if you've ever seen that poster. And this photographer took my photo with the damn freaking hand like that behind me. Like, oh my God. I got the picture if you want to see it. Try to dig through and find it. It's in my book too. But okay, so at this point, we're having some weird things going on. We have like a bunch of windows got broken down in my place, my parents' place. There was their mailbox got egged, and so let's see here. Moving on, I talked to him again, and this time he said that I was one of the Supremes, one of the most powerful beings in the universe, and he was what was possessing him was Lucifer. And I said, well, if that's the case, he was mentioning that we would fight until we both brutally would assault each other and then die. And then we would reincarnate, come over again. I said, well, if that's the case, let's not do that again this time. And I told him, well, why don't you talk to St. Germain, and maybe you can use your abilities to go after the Federal Reserve and IRS. Oh my God. And then let's see here. And then at that point, let's see here. Let's move on here. A month later, I talked to him again, and this time he said that he's bleeding and that he was holding a power cord and telecommunicating through the power cord into the internet to communicate with me, and that he said this will be the last I would hear from him. So at that point, I didn't hear again from Nathan, And then I started getting these dizzy spells where I had this paralysis. I couldn't move. And later on, I realized that was my own alters were coming out. They were so enraged about what was going on and what they were doing to us that it was trying to take me over, but it didn't quite do it, because all it ended up doing is ended up putting me in the psych ward where I couldn't move. And ultimately, they said I was psychosomatic, and they released me with some diagnosis that was just was like psychosis NOS, which is just like a general. It means they don't really know what's going on. So at that point, $25,000 later, of course, I was just starting off with college, and I couldn't afford that. So I just eventually I did go bankrupt and all that. But later on, let's move forward here in the timeline. So actually, I'll pause here. Josh, do you have any questions for me?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a little bit to unpack. As fellow guests would know and fans, the other Milab victims that we've talked to, there's always an element of gang stalking going on. Always, it seems like. I imagine you probably got it very severe.
Yeah, well, certainly they would insert you. I was part of Project Surrogate, so what that means is that my biological fetus was genetically engineered and inserted into the mother that they wanted, which is usually someone part of these experiments. My mom was part of the Mantis bloodline programs, and a lot of the super soldier programs were part of the
Hold up. I want to interrupt right there.
reptilian.
When you say mantis bloodlines, do you mean like mantis, the extraterrestrial species? Or
Yeah, they have their own
code
experimental bloodlines that they work with. A lot of different extraterrestrial groups have been doing that here on this planet to make us all like a more of an intergalactic mutts, I guess you could say, but whatever. But the point is that they found the perfect match for the DNA that they had, which in my book I talk about it. They used Nazi SS, some reptilian, more like crocodile DNA and fish DNA to make for sensory purposes, and then they would insert that into my mother as a host. So, and I mentioned more, and it wasn't just one clone fetus at that time. It was a variety, multiple of those. And in my book, I discuss how around at the age of 3, the baby that my mom had was taken off to the moon, and then I was put in his place. So, but it's a genetic copy, and then that aspect of me served as a super soldier. It's when I talk about the cages on the moon. I'm kind of going different directions here. Do you want to hear about that, what happened on the moon, or do you want to hear what going on as I moved on?
Let's hear about the moon.
All right. So at that point, I was put in some kind of cage. They called them pods. So there was this area, there were 4 pods, and each pod had about 50 kids, and most of them were black. So they had one reptilian per pod, and the reptilian in charge of my pod was Muni. And Muni would report to a higher level reptilian female queen. And the goal was to see if they could convert us into super soldiers. And it seemed like a lot of these black kids were, they probably, I don't even think they were from our planet, because they had superhuman abilities. But if they failed, they would be converted into adrenochrome. Now, in my case, I didn't fail. So they would insert this black goo AI nanites that grew like a mesh into its brain. And they also put spider DNA into it. So I would try to meditate and communicate with that aspect of me. And I said, do you remember your mom? And he just didn't understand that they erased the memories of the mother and all that, and told them that the reptilian was the mother, and the young reptilians would hatch from their nest and chase the younger kids, and they would be traumatized. So a lot of the children would dissociate and their conscience would try to leave their body. But if they did that, they would get tortured. It was beyond traumatic for that particular aspect of me. But anyway. So I could go. Let's just from there. I'm not quite sure. My memories are fragmented. I have a memory of being on the moon at LOC, but what's confusing about this memory is it was back in the 1950s. So before I was surrogated, my soul consciousness was in another body, and I talk about that for the Project Surrogate under the James Martin Reelsberg super soldier body that I was occupying. And that aspect was Delta One U.S. Army, and it died in Persia back in '79. So that was confirmed by Peter from ACIO, from the ACIO records, which is the Alien Contact Intelligence Organization, confirmed that. And which is actually kind of funny, because when I was a kid, I used to write poems under the pen name of Martin. I'm like, oh my God, I can't deal with that. And so that particular body was put on ice, and it's still in stasis right now. And I write about that in my book too. So, and then they go back even further. I have this. I got this thing for here. So this was another one they did. They did this one to me. They even wrote a. I know. I probably should read this book, Hobie Baker. I haven't read it because I don't want to read. I want to get my memories back of what happened. But do you know? Are you a hockey aficionado?
I am not.
Okay. Well, so another one of the surrogated bodies was Hobie Baker, and they were putting in different star seeds to see how they would turn out. So in that case, I was a hockey player around the turn of the century there, and then MVP. So World War I, my plane went down. I was an ace fighter pilot. In that case, the body was taken out by Darkfleet, and the clone put in its place, and that's what died. But that original body was again taken to the moon, where they were putting it through holographic projections to see, to test its abilities, because Darkfleet is always looking for individuals that have athletic abilities, because athletes have the ability to go within their mind to visualize the different trajectories and projections coming around them. And that's important as a navigation asset for with all the meteors and asteroids as are flying through space. So athletes are highly desired. And then they would experiment, of course, low oxygen environments. Athletes have enhanced abilities for breathing low oxygen environments. So yeah, I have a whole thing about the Hobie Baker in my book as well, if you're interested in that as well.
I'll definitely have to check it out.
Well, should I just move on?
I have a couple questions too. I mean, as this was going on and you're uncovering more memories, did you start having more experiences with extraterrestrials?
Well, in that case, let's see here. Well, I have this one memory in Darkfleet where I was taken. We were on this away mission, so I was a period in my life where I was on vacation, and we went to this planet that was under the control of the Galactic Federation, and I was in this area, sort of like, think of like the Soviet Union, where if you were an American, you would be around the embassy. You could go a certain distance in the local area. So that's what it was like for Darkfleet. We had an embassy there, and I was in the shop, and they had this feline being there, and they didn't really like us on that planet. But anyway, I was going through some of the crystals, and then this feline being saw what I was doing, and it like grabbed the crystal when I was holding it. And immediately I had this download of living on planet Earth. I'm like, well, that's interesting. That's why I saw my life here. I'm like, okay. And then, so they go back to the ship. And because what happened, I think this is when, was it like Corey Good talked about his handler, that Rodriguez guy. Supposedly they got caught because they were on a mission there to spy on the Galactic. The Darkfleet was spying on the Galactic Federation's capabilities, weapon capabilities, right? So they got caught. And so immediately all Darkfleet personnel had to go off and go back to their ship. And then when I went back on board, I went through a debriefing process, and they asked me, what do I remember, and this that, because at that point I was on a hunger break, hunger strike. So I would now, if you don't eat all the food that they give you while you're on course, an officer, they will put you under medical interrogation, and I would just skip some of the food and didn't eat all of it. But there was somebody there at that time in the cafeteria that didn't eat all their food, and they would give you injections for nutrient injections. So when they found out that I had memories of being on planet Earth, then they put me through the trip seat protocol, and they erased my memory and increased my alcoholic beverage consumption, my beer consumption. But yeah, so I do remember that we had like this black uniform with like this yellow colored striping on it. So, and I had my own room because I was navigation asset, so we were treated a little bit better. But it was like this Draco they had Dracos assigned to us, and it would look into our minds to see what we remember. And I was like, oh my God, I'm getting a headache. Think about it. Let's change the subject. That thing.
Okay.
That thing.
Another question I'm going to just throw out there: with everything going on in the public right now with disclosure and the recent conference, do you think there's actually something happening, or do you think it's just a distraction right now for the media?
I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead. Tell me what it is. What's your question?
I said, with the recent conference with Congress and all the exposure about UAPs, do you think that there's actually going to be disclosure, or that's just a distraction?
Oh my gosh. So that's what they're putting that in front of the public. Well, if the public wants to find out what's really going on, all they got to do is go over to our channels, right? So yeah, it will get to the point where the whole full disclosure thing, it will come out. We will be on that timeline. And when it does happen, it's going to be so shocking because I know my friend, he was talking about this, where he was projected into the future, and he saw, it might have been like a CNN broadcast where they had a super soldier. They're talking about secret space programs. So it will get to the point where this material will be mainstream, but we haven't got there yet. So, and then there very likely may be marches on Washington, D.C. if the Capitol will even stay there. I think the Capitol will either be leveled or turned into a museum. But but we'll have marches where we can, like we had with the civil rights era, right? We recognized a certain race of beings within our own country that deserve to be honored, and now we're going to have the same thing with people that were through alien abductions or secret space programs that were totally ignored because nobody wanted to recognize that our experiences were legit, because doing so would mean it would jeopardize the whole basis of our reality. It would upset people. I mean, we can go on and on now. Yeah, just how the average person is just asleep. Yeah.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I think there's a lot of it too with disclosure being covered up because nobody wants to take responsibility for so much heinous activities we've partaked in.
Well, there's so many parties benefiting from the secrecy that we're under. We can start with even like the Galactic Federation. There's a lot of even within their own organization, a schism taking place of what should be done with planet Earth. Many people are benefiting from the secrecy where humans are being abducted and used in these programs as a slave, essentially. We can call us a super soldier, but really just a super slave that have been genetically engineered. So, and many of even like the secret space programs benefit because we're just like a giant resource for them. So why tell the public? And that's where really the disclosure comes from, the grassroots. It's from us, the people. We, the people, are going to tell the truth. So that way you can be all saved. So your children don't be put through these projects and their children, so on and so on. We don't have a slow disclosure timeline where I know like Hillary Clinton wanted that, where, oh my gosh, don't get me started about this. But I think the fastest time, we're somewhere like in the middle. We're not really fast, not really that slow, but there's always more improvement. So here we are. Yeah. Okay. So do you want to hear what happened next with my friend Nate and how I came into this? Okay. All right. So at that point, got out of the psych ward, and they were forcing me to talk to these doctors, and I was getting injection marks every day. And I just got some this past week. I get it may be a little tiny needle mark. Sometimes it's a little bit more. I'll show you right now. I'll see if I can share my screen. Let me see if I can find this. Can you see that? Is it not? Oh, anyway. So I would get like scoop marks. I already mentioned the
There we go.
laser mark. Little scratches on me just a little bit. So this was all in the last month or two. This one, I was working on Eve Lorgan's artwork for her show. And as I was putting this was like these grays coming out here. It was like, oh my God. Then this thing showed up on my leg. So it's not when I'm just sleeping. I can be wide awake. Some little thing on my hand there. And then I got this little triangular mark on my nose. I know it's difficult to take a photo at close range of your face.
Oh, I can see it. Yeah, I can see it. It's a perfect triangle. It's different.
So that's all I had. I've got a folder of thousands of more pictures, and I want to show them all to you, because I remember one time, sometimes I get like bruising on my butt, right? So, and I was taking a photo of that, and I was sharing it publicly, and next thing you know, whoops, I had to go back and edit that. So I don't really want to show you that folder unless I go through that, really pull out things for you. But yeah, so I was getting these needle marks, and I was telling the doctor that I wanted to get regression work, and he told me, oh, we don't do that anymore. And then he said that, I said I was being abducted by the Greys, and then he gave me a bottle of Seroquel before I left the office. So when I got home, I threw it out, and I told the doctor I'm getting a second opinion. So at that point, I realized us people in our community, were not going to be honored and respected by the organizations that are meant to protect people like us. And then I realized we have to help ourselves. But I'm going to get to that. So let's go forward. 2 years went by. I found Nathan posting articles about killing women on a poetry website. And I messaged him. I said, Nathan, why are you posting poems about killing women? Where have you been? And his girlfriend contacted me and told me he didn't know who you were. And I said, okay, great. So I handed her about 200 pages of transcripts. And then she came back and said that Nathan made it all up. And I said, okay, if that's the case, tell him to contact me to let me know that he made it all up. And then oh my gosh, hold on. I can find it. I can find the exact quote. Hold on a second. I'm going to look. I
wonder if this is the same person that I'm thinking of.
Okay. Oh, I don't. Actually, I know I could look it up. Hold on. Just say something, Josh, while I look for this. Okay, I found it. We are emailing you concerning your friend Nathan. Your interest in this particular person has raised concern. Further research shall be discontinued, or actions will be taken to destroy the information you have archived. We understand your concern. However, the things you recorded are personal information. The other information you found was fabricated by your own mind. Telekinesis and government brainwashing does not exist and has never existed. There is no evidence in any government logs that aliens have ever existed. We're watching you, James, Mr. Gray. So I wrote her back and said, well, wait a minute. Why is he signing it as this Mr. Gray and not Nathan? So at that point, she messaged me back, said that she would wake up at night and he wasn't in the bed, and that she said she found bottles of embryos with his name on it, and she found glass shards in her back, cut marks, and she said she was losing her memories. And she also said that he was working with other telekinetic kids to set up a new world order. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So at that point, I just let it be. But moving on, came across another guy, kid. I was trying to remember this was. I think it was Victor back in the day. So Victor was in high school, and he said that I look like this other friend that he had, and this name was Adam. And I was talking to Adam, and Adam was mentioning how like his father was picked up by limousines. He was in the Illuminati. And as he was describing this, men in black show up at the door, or at least he described that. And then then he started channeling this being named Tian. And Tian said that we were brothers, as in we had similar DNA, and our consciousness could be transferred through different clone bodies. So I could be transferred to a clone body similar to his DNA or whatnot. And Tian said he was a 14-foot tall reptilian from Diomedes 1564. If I got that right, it's the exact numbers in my book. But he said that humans are too stupid, and that reptilians make the super soldiers because they have more expertise about it. And he said it became attached to my particular clone body, or our clone bodies, and that the military was planning on exterminating us and come up with a new model. And he became attached, and he wanted to let us know what was going on, because it was against protocol for them to communicate with humans. But then I told him, well, we're not actually humans, are we? And he's like, oh, okay. But he did get in trouble, and I can go into that just a bit. But Tian said that my friend Nathan was taken to the moon, 45-9 or something, some numbers. It's in my book, the exact base number, where they would put him through a torture chamber, kill him, reanimate him, and then they wouldn't give him any food, and he would die again, torture. So this kind of situation where they're just draining him of his energy. And I talk about this vat where there's these reptilians, they would stick their tail in this vat and eat the energy from the different, because he was a different type of super soldier than myself. And anyway, so okay, at this point, don't hear anything. Adam just can't handle any of this stuff, and he's not really, we're not talking right now, but that material is also in the book as well. So let's see here, years later, we can move forward. And then I start working with other people in this community. And at this time, before 2010, the UFO community was not very open-minded to the idea where the military was actually abducting most of these people. So it was, they said that we were discrediting them. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, you're discrediting us by not telling the truth. So I set up Super Soldier Talk, and ever since then, I've been allowing people to come on my platform to share their experiences. And it hasn't always been easy, because some people, lied, and some people are really way off. They probably are experiencer, but they might be on the schizoid spectrum.
Trauma, yeah.
They're very I think, Josh, we were talking about someone earlier.
Yeah.
That we both knew, but it has, but there has been great disclosure taking place, and I wouldn't have done it any differently, even though I couldn't really go corporate now, unless I changed my name, I guess. But I did use my real name and all this, because I wanted people to see that we're telling the truth, and we don't need to hide behind a stage name. But okay, do you have any other questions?
We have a little bit of some questions from the audience. Jason H asked, when you have the marks, do you just find them, or do you feel them happen?
Feel them happening. So I would be here talking to you, and next thing you know, my ear would itch, and I would touch it, and then the blood flakes would flake off, and there's a chunk of flesh missing. And then it would start hurting really bad and turn red. And oh gosh, so they got a scoop mark. Sometimes I would get, let's see here, I had like a little rod-shaped object inserted underneath my pinky
Implant.
And then the skin was like ripped apart from underneath there. Other times I would get like little needle marks on my lip, because that particular tissue in your mouth regenerates quickly, so they can take tissue samples for my clones, is what they're doing, the scoop marks. So if you're getting that, you're most likely used in these projects too. Just let you know. And you deserve to have your memories back if you want them back. And probably, I think we should be compensated. That would be nice too.
Oh, absolutely. Does the triangle represent anything? And if you had more than one of them, I saw the one on your nose.
Well, that's typically a certain crest from a group of extraterrestrials. I was told Federation one time. I don't know if this is necessarily Federation doing that. It's their way of letting you know that you got abducted. Because one time it was February on Valentine's Day of 2008, I think it was, and typically I was getting like triangular shape marks, but this day I got a heart. So it's not not my cat. I don't have a cat. It's not a spider crawling in my mouth. It's not my dog or whatever. Some of these people
Right.
they come up excuses. Oh, you're scratching yourself. Oh, and it's in the shape of a heart. Okay, well, great. So, or you could just believe me and just understand that yes, we're being abducted. Anyway, so let's see here. Over the years I worked with different individuals. I think I went to LA back in 2011, and I met with Carrie Cassidy, Project Camelot, the Wake and Aware. And at that time, I think was it like Aaron McCullen? We had Duncan O was there, and so we were. I was there with Max Spears. I picked him up. We went there, and I was trying to get interest in the SSP community with Carrie, but ultimately what happened is I met up with Lorian Fenton there, and Lorian was puts on conferences in California, in the San Francisco area, and she said that she's looking to do a super soldier conference. I'm like, okay, great. So let's get Duncan O, Max Spears, myself, and there was a few others back then. And then ultimately Duncan O didn't want to be associated with us because he didn't, I don't want to go talk. It's personal and for him, but ultimately, yeah. So next year we all go out to San Francisco, and then Max Spears. So we all needed a place to stay, right? Because you know how expensive San Francisco is, right? And we had a listener of the show graciously open up his house for me to sleep in, and I said, well, you know, we some of these other people need places. Could you allow them? And then ultimately, yeah. So they had another room, and then there was the tent in the backyard. So Max went into his medicine cabinet, and during the conference, he started getting manic, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on with him? And then ultimately, we had to take him to the hospital, get his stomach pumped. And after he got out of the hospital, the first thing he did, he came up to me, he says, why'd you go through my stuff? Because I had to go through his bag to figure out what he took. And at that point, I just said, screw you, and I just left. And that was a year later. She put on the event again, and Las Vegas at the Fiesta Inn, which now has since been torn down, and that's where the whole mass Milab abduction. I know I tried to rekindle my relationship with Max, but it didn't feel the same. And after what happened, because it wasn't the only time he did that to me, but James Casbolt came out to this one, and that's where I was just talking with Miles Johnson on my show, where there was like a mass Milab abduction. Have you heard about this story?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe some of your audience hasn't heard it, but essentially someone broke into my room, and I know that because we had those manual locks was busted up, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, I don't remember. It was busted up, so somebody came in the door, but I don't remember anybody coming in my room while I was sleeping. So I told James Caswell about it, and he said that there was a mass Milab abduction, and Max and some of the other people were taken into this rider van and taken to Area 51, where we were put into Nazi uniforms. And I think he said, like, my ship was Cassiopeia. I forgot what maybe it'll come to me. The name is Calipia. I was Cassiopeia. It was anyway. I don't remember any of this. So, but so at that point, James Casbolt starts falling apart, and I feel bad for the guy because, if it wasn't for Casbolt, I mean, the whole super soldier community really wouldn't have got off to where it was. And I just watched him fall apart. So, but it was the path that he wanted to be on, and now he's out of the jail or wherever, whatever you would say. That was it. So I wish him the best, whatever path he's on. So, but he's not allowed. Supposedly, he's not allowed on the internet. I don't know. Find out soon enough. Soundcore, SoundCloud, whatever it is, SoundCloud. I think it's posting his rap music. Anyway, so let's go on here. So moving on, then I met who was Jay Essex. Do you remember Jay Essex, Josh?
I do not.
Jay Essex. So he was doing these spiritual symposiums, and he was in tune with, I guess, like creator source. And the way he was explaining our reality is that we were basically like in a slave grid, and the higher beings that control this reality don't care about us, and that we are an experiment where they're hands off and just want to see what happens. That's why when you pray and something horrible happens, because basically the higher forces don't really care. And it really did. It made a lot of sense when he explained it that way, because they were saying like, well, if God doesn't want you to do this, they're going to tell your guardian angel to just not help you, and then you're going to get run over by a car or whatever it is. So it's like, and that's where he was saying like, if you were within this whole spiritual community, this whole new age community, I guess we could even say, there's a belief that we've come to this planet as a school, and we're here to go through our traumas, to learn and to grow. That's the belief that we're told. But what was explained to me was that the people that run this reality have never incarnated into it, and to them, what happens is that abuse is part of our life. We're taught to that it's good, and what the thing is that we've been abused for so long that people don't even recognize that it's not right. It's not good to be abused, and so that was main teachings of J. Essex, and then ultimately, we even went down to Florida together with Ben Murphy. Do you remember Ben Murphy, Josh?
No.
Ben Murphy, he put the Heather material out. So Heather, I think it was Heather Anderson. I think. So Heather, she was a scientist in this underground dump around northeast Orlando, below ground, where they were taking Iraqi soldiers and reanimating them from the dead and putting wires, HDEY wires, to make them super soldiers, where they would go into a 0 point scenario. And then one day they came up with a new way of making super soldiers, where they would have titanium bones and clone tissue around the bones. So they said to kill off the others, the reanimated super soldiers. So, and she felt bad about doing that, because what she said is they were converted into omega-3. And then that was Merck Pharmaceuticals, omega-3. So that was from humans. So don't ever use any pharmaceutical grade omega-3. Anyway, okay. So she came forward, and Ben Murphy was her contact. So I went down there. We went to this area, northeast Orlando. So the video's up on my channel. So you have to dig for it if you want to find it. And James is out there with Ben. But what's really sad is, I think it was it 2019? Something 2020, he died. So they put like a flechette in his heart, and he was slowly internally bleeding. And because he wasn't a U.S. citizen, he couldn't get access to our healthcare, and he didn't have health insurance or have any money, because his flechette was slowly draining him of his vitality. And he handed me some audio files for deprogramming, which I've never released. So, I mean, if somebody emails me, say, hey, James, can you release it? I will. But I was told years ago, just don't put that out. I probably won't be releasing that. Well, we'll find out. If you want it, maybe I'll do it. But so yeah, he died, and from that point, anyway. But let's just see. Let's move on. There was no more super soldier summits. Moving on and then I started getting really sick, and I had to slow down a little bit. 2015, 2016. And then moving on to 2017 is when I started doing more conferences and going public. But and then let's see. I think it was like 2006. That's when I started working with Peter, the Insider, with ACIO. I was working with him till about 2020. And we did about 40 interviews maybe over the years. So and I think I've got about 1,000 interviews under my belt of all this time.
Wow.
Many other people, many of them in person. And I could just go on. I mean, what do you want to know?
How long has Project Surrogate been going on? When do you think you can first pinpoint that it started?
Okay, so Project Surrogate was originally a positive program. And what it was is that on the initial human Earth timeline, the cabal, well, let me just back up. Most of the people have been, like I said earlier, we've been beaten down through trauma to the point where a lot of people just gave up. And so in order for the plans of the dark side to manifest, most of the planet needs to be more than 50% negative, because through the power of beliefs, we can manifest. So by allowing star seeds to incarnate through Project Surrogate into our bodies here, we're able to raise the vibration of the planet to a point where it's more than 50% positive. And that was in 2020, like August of 2020, when we became more than 50% positive. And once that happens, there is a Mandela effect where many of the elites go back in time 20 years, back to the early 2000s, to try to reset the timeline. And many of us have been on that timeline, repeating cycle after cycle after cycle because of nuclear war. Because ultimately, when they did win, there was nuclear war and we all die. So we project back in time and do it over again. So that's why it's important that we win. And so Project Surrogate was initially a positive project. The problem is, the negative Orion groups hijacked it for a period of time, which is the time that I was in it, and we weren't given the help that we were supposed to be given. So I got taken into these projects, the programs. But now I believe it's been switched over. Now it's positive again. The people in charge of it. Oh my gosh. Josh, do you even know who I'm talking about? Peter the Insider?
I am not offhand. But,
okay. Well, after Ben Murphy died, I told Peter what was going on, and he was very insensitive to me and brought up this issue with Johann Fritz. I shared a lot of private information with Johann Fritz, and I told him not to share. I was testing him. I wanted to see if I could trust Johann Fritz. And I showed him a picture. I said, I was just joking, say, don't show this to Peter. And it was like one of his, it wasn't a picture of Peter. It was like a profile picture. And of course, he went right and showed it to Peter. So I learned right off the bat. When you're in this community, it's not easy because there's people, a lot of good stories, they've got great information, but they're not all your friends. So it took me a while to really understand that all these people are not my friends. But so Johann Fritz, and then he hurt my friend Kimberly because we were helping him, and then but Peter was very insensitive about it, and at that point, I felt like it wasn't a good match. They were telling me what I was allowed to say or not say on my show, and I said that's not going to happen. So ultimately, we went off our different paths. But I think maybe it's time. Maybe we can all just put aside differences and try to work together. But I'll keep doing the best that I do. I'm not going to give up. We're going to take this to the finish line, and if people want to be the way they are, then we're just going to honor that and just move on. Did that answer your question? Was it Jason? Yeah, hopefully. Okay.
Thanks for answering that, James.
Okay, well, I respect Johann Fritz. For the work that he's done, but it's just not easy because you just have to learn that if we want to get disclosure, you just got to put aside your ego. No. Matter of fact, people have told me that, James, that's part of your problem. You don't have enough ego. I probably have like the least amount of ego. And I don't know if there's any other podcaster, maybe, I don't know, John, but I need more ego. And that was as I was saying earlier about Nathan, what he said about being one of the Supremes. My consciousness is creator source energy. So we actually were over the super archangel and the archangels and all that. But despite all that, I don't feel any special or different than anybody else. I just want to help make the world a better place. So, okay. Well, does anybody have any more questions? Yeah, you're welcome, Jason. So, all right. Well, how about we can I'm putting on a tour in West Texas, May of 2025. So it's going to be with Renetta Jones and Brad Olson, and We're going to have about 20 people out there in the desert. We've got rental cars for you. We're going to cover your horseback riding and your bike. We're going to go bike riding in the desert, and we're going to go see all these different sites. So according to Renetta Jones, there is a extinct Atlantean civilization that used to exist in West Texas. And this would have gone back millions of years, probably since the time of Atlantis. So that would have been 50,000 years ago. But these ruins are 1,000,000 years old. So up to 1,000,000 years ago. And they're highly eroded. But we're going to go out there and look at these sites. If you'd like to join us on the tour, you can go to titansofatlantistour.com and sign up for that. So again, we only have like a few spots available for you. So first come, first serve.
That sounds amazing.
Okay. In April, I'm going to Los Angeles for the 5D events for that one. I should probably tell you the name of the website. Oh my gosh, if I can go find it real quick. So that's put on by David Said. Let's see if I can get you the name of the website. If people keep posting stuff on my Facebook wall. Oh my gosh, hold on. Everybody stay put. Don't go anywhere. I'm gonna find it.
I know that seems to be the new trend, is to tag everybody.
No, it's like Rob, he's posting like every interview. Okay, let me see if I can find the 5D. Rob Calley. Okay. I would say maybe go to biomedexpo.com because I don't see it here. Let me go. I'm actually going to click on that website. So you can go get tickets for that if you're going to be out in Los Angeles. Oh shoot! Did I do? Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's interesting. He started adding this. So yeah, go to bizton.com, bizton.com, and it will take you to the April 4th to the 6th, 2025 for the 5D events. Okay. All right. Now I'm also putting on my own conference in October 2025. The tickets aren't available yet. I'm working on that. So we're going to go to Orlando for about 4 days. And if you want to stick around for the 5th day, we're going to go over to Universal and check out the Islands of Adventure, where we can all kind of get together for a fun event. So I think that's like $110 for the Universal, but start saving up money for that and come on out in Orlando, Florida to check out the first ever Super Soldier Activation Conference. It's my second conference, but it's my first ever one like this because as you know, I put one on last year and didn't turn out as well as I liked, not because of attendance, but because of the community. I learned, as I said earlier, that a lot of these people are not my friends, but they have a voice that needs to be heard. So,
right.
So that was a learning lesson for me. I made this mistake by putting people around me that weren't good people. They had resources, but they weren't people that were willing to honor the mission that I put in on the work for the last 20 years for this. But anyway. Okay. Any other questions, Josh?
Oh, yeah. How can someone tell if they have had experiences?
Well,
especially when your mind gets wiped.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you're going to get the needle marks. Usually that's a telltale sign. There's also gaps of your memory. We find a lot of people that were through MK Ultra have trouble remembering their childhood. If that describes you, that's a telltale sign. We can also have issues where maybe you have certain psionic abilities where other people don't, because they're always targeting individuals like that. Dreams, especially fighting off world in a super soldier body. Or most people in the secret space program weren't super soldiers, by the way. There's a lot of people that need to be med technicians. You need engineers. You need a lot of maintenance workers, janitorial role, and of course like cooks and they would have had replicators, but the best food would have been cooked fresh. So, but so in that case, I can't remember what the question was.
How can someone
how do you know? Okay.
Yeah.
So, what's some other ways? Okay. typically, if you don't feel like you belong on this planet, you're probably part of Project Surrogate, or if your parents, your family, you don't even feel like you're related to them, it's another sign that you probably aren't related to them. Okay.
And often nowadays are starseeds and super soldiers usually together, like in one body. Is that fairly common now, or
Oh, so what percentage of the population?
of super soldiers are starseeds?
I mean, what are we looking at? Like 25% of the population are probably star seeds, whether they're awake or not. So yeah. So if you are a star seed, I mean, you would probably have had maybe different genetic differences. Typically, like what green eyes means you're more reptilian. You might have your skin might be. Some people have like scale-like skin, and it's really painful. I mean, one individual like that, or they say like people that were more cybernetic have like this white skin that if you bleed, so if you don't bleed blood, you bleed like a white milky substance. They showed that in the original Aliens movie. Remember the android that got cut up? So that was actually that first Alien movie was a documentary, by the way. So so look for different genetic traits, signs. I knew this girl that I was dating, she had her eyes turned into slits. I'm like, oh my god. After that, I mean, she's still a nice person. I don't, but yeah. So if you see that might be a sign that they could have feline or reptilian genetics in them. So yeah. Okay. Well,
I guess one other question that I had for you was, how did you learn to do like the what is it called? The hypnotist, when you could go and read. Did you just train yourself with that? Was that ability learned because of your super soldier DNA?
okay. So the question is, how do I learn how to do regression? I didn't even mention that.
Yes. I've had a few people have come to you for it, so I've always been curious.
Well, I was self-taught. I've studied some of Richard Bandler, by the way. I think he is an asset for sure. I've heard stories about him, but the different types of what not to do when you do a regression. You don't want to do any negativity. You don't want to like say, oh, don't do that. You want to say, you would always want to give people a choice. Instead of say, don't do that, you would say, what do you choose? What would you like to choose to do? And you always allow people to feel like they're in control and safe. So, and also you don't really want to like give any kind of like, for instance, okay, let me say this. If someone is being abducted by the grades and they're crying, they're screaming during the regression, you don't want to say something like, you didn't deserve to be hurt. You want to say something more like, what would you like to choose to do? Do you want to choose to go to a different timeline? Should we call in the Alliance to send a squad of super soldiers here and annihilate them? And so so just trying to you avoid negatives and see what else you got to do. There's an induction. Some people need a really long induction, which means you got to get them into a relaxed state of being so you can talk to their subconscious. That can typically take somewhere between, I knew some people, I can immediately go, they're already there. Some people might need like 10, 15 minutes to get into that. So, yeah. And I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. I don't have any kind of like official training, but I've studied enough to know what not to do. And I would say there was a time where I was working one individual, and what I tell people to do is, instead of visualizing yourself there in the scenario, like let's say the grays of you on the table they're abducting, I tell you, instead of seeing yourself on the table, see yourself out in a distance hanging over the table watching everything as an observer. And that also kind of reduces the emotional quotient attached to the trauma. But however, I had this one lady and she just went right into that table. I was like, oh my gosh, I tried to get her out of it. She would not want to listen to it. She was ready to go deal with those grays. And that was, anyway. And then we had, I had this one lady, she she remembers being taken to this underground base where there was a reptilian in there, and what did it say? So the reptilian like murdered a child in front of her, and then they left the dead body in there for 3 days. 3 days later, the reptilian comes back and grabs a piece of the skull and rubs it on her arm and asks her, "What does this make you feel? How does this make you feel?" And at that point, the reptilian said, "James Rinks is listening to us." And I'm like, "Oh, great." And I was talking to my mentor about this. So what do you think is going on here? And it's like, well, she was looking at your own memories. So it's not under regression. It's not only you can see your own memories, you can see others around you. So you have to make sure you always do your clearing and make sure it's the information is pure, as if it's their own memories. But oh gosh, that was something. Oh, anyway, go on.
That'd have been creepy.
Well, so everybody go to Super Soldier Talk on Rumble and YouTube. Subscribe. Go to Neological Tech. Get a copy of my book, and you can get a meditation device. I'll see if I can pull it over here.
Yeah, you should talk to us about that, Clay.
Sure. So the meditation device has 6 pyramids. They're all inside the cube. So they point inside. Oh my gosh. Can't say that. Am I not? Oh, there it is. So on each corner of the box, and then there's a cavity in the corner where the sphere is. So the sphere for this particular unit has 13 crystal skulls, little small ones. And then the pyramid has different waxes, and I put copper powder in here and crystals. And then there's lots of copper, different Andara crystals. I put in shungite. I've got amethyst in here. So I have a more advanced lapis ormus, Canadian orolite, which is a type of amethyst. I mean, I got both actually. And then I also put in for the monastery, I've got 24 karat gold gilding that I put on there. So it's really 24 karat gold and blue diamond. I think I've got like Aaron's gem, the breastplate for Aaron in the Bible, the gemstones. I got that in there. So the Israelite priest would use those gemstones for scrying, where they would have a candlelight a candlelight burning, and then they would gaze into the stones under the candlelight. They would get visions. So, but you're not going to be able to see the stones. You just you put the cube on your lap. You don't touch it. You activate it. I got the manual there. It teaches you how to do it, and you sit there quietly for, I recommend 30 minutes, and meditate. So I use mine probably 2 or 3 times a week, and I feel, if I don't do it, I feel a lot different. I just feel a lot more stressed. It increases chi energy and reduces stress, so it helps you feel better. And that's what I've been using to help heal my PTSD.
That's awesome. So everybody, if you're feeling stressed, go check that out. We will have a link up.
Neologicaltech.com. NEOLOGICALTECH.com. Thank you. Get a copy of my book too.
That's the Lone Wolf, right?
Yeah, the Lone Wolf. You can also go to my nonprofit, Healing Soul Survivors. That is SOUL, soul, survivors, SURVIVORS.org, healingsoulsurvivors.org, and make a donation to the nonprofit. And you can see I got some projects in there that I've done in the past. I did a tour to Montauk, New York. That was interesting. Maybe I could do another one in the future if anyone's interested. Anyway. Okay. All right. Josh, unless you have any other questions.
And I think that was it. It's been a lot of fun. I'm glad to have you on. You answered a lot of questions for me. Got to do it again sometimes, James.
Very good. Maybe we could talk more about the MK Ultra programming, or how they make a super soldier, the type of super soldiers, if you like.
Oh, I'd love that.
Okay.
That'd be awesome.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
End the stream.